There is a famous scene in Kung Fu Panda, which for me is one of the great all-time personal development movies. If you ever want a movie that, in a amazingly accessible way for any kind of audience, gives a wonderful reflection of what it is to truly own one's authentic self, then for me you need to look no further than Kung Fu Panda. And in the movie there's this wonderful scene where Po, who is the hero, the Kung Fu Panda, who is essentially a kind of somewhat large and unfit panda, not at all the typical creature who would be seen as being good at kung fu, basically, without giving too much of the film away. There's a scene where he embarks on the start of his training, and he is asking his teacher, where they're going to begin, and his teacher says, we'll begin with this, and it's a kind of training course. And Po looks at it and goes, whoa, it's a bit much. How about we start somewhere a bit closer to my level? And his teacher asks, and what level is that? And Po replies, level 0. And the teacher chuckles and says, there's no such thing as level 0. Cue comedic hilarity where Po falls into the training session and gets his comeuppance quite hilariously before crawling back, defeated, to the feet of his teacher, and asks his teacher, how did I do? And the teacher replies simply, there is now a level 0. And this is kind of how I felt a few years back, discovering the world of, I guess, personal work, inner work, shadow work, emotional intelligence. I'm not exactly sure what to call it, but from the ongoing reflections of those closest to me and a group of men who were in my life as part of a mentoring charity that I was involved in helping to set up, the consistent reflections were that I was very guarded, and that my ability to be kind of open and intimate and connect with others was limited. And if that had been the reflection of just one person, well, maybe, I didn't need to pay it too much mind. But the fact that it was a consistent reflection that was given to me meant I had to pay some attention. And so it really started an ongoing journey of exploring what it is to relate with others. And I guess in the process, learning that there may well be some kind of like autistic spectrum elements sprinkled in there. Maybe a bit of Asperger's. I haven't had the official diagnosis beyond knowing that ADHD is a framework that probably is present in my life. So there may be that. What there certainly is and was is the impact of a formative decade at boarding school. And I've joked in the past that if you wanted a mechanism, a system for shutting down empathy, for shutting down open-heartedness and vulnerability, you'd have to look pretty hard to find a better system than the British boarding school system. And over the years, it really led me to understand that when I described my heart as broken, I wasn't saying that, I'd been upset and had lots of grief. No, it was that literally, like, if my heart was, a computer or a car, like, they just wouldn't be operational. Like the motherboard on the computer was missing, or the fuel tank in the car, wasn't properly installed. That's the nature of this, is that my capacity for empathy through my time at boarding school, through what it took to survive that environment, had been shut down, had never really fully come online. And as a result, my ability to then show up empathetically, intimately, vulnerably with others, I felt like at times I was poing Kung Fu Panda. I was at level 0. I didn't even know what it was that I was missing. because people would describe, what I ought to be feeling or how I ought to be behaving, and I had no frame of reference to understand what they were saying, let alone even be able to act on what they were saying. And thankfully, over the years, through various types of kind of inner work and through the process of, opening myself to grief, particularly, the grief of, my marriage dissolving quite unexpectedly, and then actually the grief of forming a very powerful bond with my first dog, a Labrador called Oka, and then him passing on in just 16 months. So I like to say that we shared 16 years of love in just 16 months. The grief of those two events in particular really opened my heart and began my journey to really understand where I was at in my capacity to relate with others and where it is today. And the reason I'm sharing this is because as lines of division get drawn, and perhaps as the drums of war beat louder, the ability to relate with each other from the heart feels more important than ever. And where this is for myself at the moment is it's really present with my children, that I am trying on a daily basis and very often failing to be open-hearted with my children, to really meet them in their softness, their joy, their playfulness. And I really don't always succeed. For me, when I was their age, my entire existence was predicated on fitting in, predicated on almost not being spontaneous, not being wacky or creative or fun, but just doing whatever it took to not stand out. Because if you stood out, then potentially you put yourself in the firing line, whatever the firing line was for that day. And so to notice how my children, in their spontaneity and playfulness, in their creativity, in their desire for attention and affection, call me to a more full and complete experience of open-hearted love, has been a revelation and is an ongoing revelation. And so I share this because today's newsletter is all about the different elements and ways that we relate. And my hope is that in sharing what I share, that however interpersonal relating shows up for you this week, that this may give you some inspiration, an invitation to maintain an open heart and to show up as your most loving self, no matter what the circumstance might be. And in so doing, to perhaps change whatever the situation is for the better. All right. Here's to open-heartedness. Here's to wonder. Here's to joy. Have a great day.